We're going live.
Right.
Are you all dancing? Because I'm dancing.
Somebody's dancing.
Can I get a mic check, please, SCToon?
Yeah, check 1, 2. Check.
You're coming in loud and clear. Schrodinger's cat, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, Jewell
I
Warren.
heard an echo, though. I don't know.
Jewell Warren, give me a mic check.
Testing.
Lovely,
1, 2,
jubbly.
3.
And Eric, can I get a 1, 2 from you, please?
Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
Lovely. Should be a good show, this one. Looking forward to this. Live in 30 seconds.
Right, this should be good. And looking forward to this one.
Okay, live in 20 seconds. Live in 10. We're live in 5, 4, 3.
Hello, everybody. I'm SCToon. This is the SCToon Show. I hope you're having a great evening. This is an exciting debate tonight. We are talking about evolution, abiogenesis, creation, young Earth creation. It will be an interesting one between Jewell Warren and Eric Jewell. But before we get to them, I want to introduce you to my co-host, the co-owner of this channel, Schrodinger's cat. How are you doing today, Mr. Schrodinger's cat?
I am excellent. I had an unplanned nap that I just woke up from. So don't even remember lying down. Don't know what happened. I think it was the CIA.
It could be that they definitely do unscheduled naps. Well, anyway, we have the notes for this debate are in the description here. It's on my website, mct.net/SCT-4. So you can follow along. It's got the citations for each of our participants. Be sure when you are communicating in the chat to be polite. This is not meant to be a adversarial time here. Super chats are appreciated, but we will not be reading if they're off. Right. So questions, please address questions to RizQ. They will get sent to me. I'll read them. I'll read super chats. And we should have a great time tonight. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our moderator for the evening, Schrodinger's cat. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. How is everyone doing this evening? Well, evening for me. It is 1906 where I am, which is in civilian time, that's 7:06 p.m. Are you ready for me to go ahead and get into the format for tonight?
Yeah, let's do that. Well, maybe you want to let them introduce themselves first.
Okay. So yeah, go ahead. I guess let's start with Eric. Say who you are, why you're here, and tell us about your channel and whatever you'd like to say to introduce yourself.
Hello. Well, I've got a brand new channel up. My name is Eric Jewell. And I did have a channel with tons of content on it, live productions, live streams, and produced movies that I had made. But evidently, YouTube views political views as hate speech if you say that people of both parties should be prosecuted and have their day in court. So my channel was taken down. But I am beginning a new one. It's going to be involving some political speech, creationism, biblical studies, having talks with atheists, Muslims, and people of all sorts, really. I don't denigrate anybody. I accept everybody for who and what they are. I have friends of just about every religion you can imagine, or just about every philosophy. I do enjoy debating and discussing subjects, though, and I try to stick with what I know. So I'm looking forward to the debate this evening. I would like to clarify one thing. You mentioned young Earth creationism. I'm not a young Earth creationist, by the way. I am an old Earth creationist, although I'm not your typical old Earth creationist. So I'd be happy to explain my views some other time when we have more time. But that's about it for me. My name's Eric. Glad to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me, and looking forward to the debate.
Excellent. Then thanks for showing up. It doesn't always work out that way. So so good to have you here. And FTFE, say who you are and why you're
He's
here.
just producing. It's JL.
Say again?
It's JL that you need to introduce.
Oh, what did I say?
You said FTFE?
Oh, well, I'm just so excited to have him here that I couldn't help myself.
That's okay. I'm just one of the debaters. So, greetings, everyone in the live chat. I am JL, for those not familiar with me. I am an atheist YouTuber. I create atheist content. My channel, Bridge the Divide, focuses on irrational beliefs and irrational behaviors, and how, with education, rationality, and reason, we can bridge the societal divides that these things create. That is the focus of what I do. I guess you could say I'm a science proponent. Philosophically, I'm a methodological naturalist, and I examine claims like this and try to kind of like break them down as to why they don't work. And I'm looking forward to this debate. Been looking forward to this debate for a while. So thank you to SCToon and Shortage Cat and FTFE and everybody behind the scenes of the SCToon show for putting this on. I appreciate my opponent showing up, and thank you to everyone in the live chat who has shown up to hear this debate. I appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, and been looking forward to it. So what do you say? Let's do this. Let's kick this pig.
Yep. Yeah. Let's do this. Very excited for tonight's debate.
Cliff, that's it. You gotta get him going on the format.
Oh yeah. Okay. You ready for the format?
Yeah.
Okay. So tonight's format, we will begin with 12 minutes each for an introduction. Say who you are, why you're here. And then from there, we will go into 10 minutes each for cross-examination. So responding to your opponent's introduction. From there, we will go into 15 minutes each open discussion. After that, we'll take a break. We will be exhausted from lively debate. From there, we will go anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes each for questions from the audience. And then 3 minutes each after that for closing statements. So 3 minutes each for closing statement. And then we'll just be spent at that point. Did I miss anything? I think you're muted.
I was muted. That sounds great.
Of course it is. I said
All right. Let's hear it. All right.
Let's get Schrodinger a cup of coffee.
Nah, no kidding. All right, Eric.
Oh, no. If I drink coffee, I'll be up all night.
All right, Eric. Eric is up with his 12-minute intro.
Why is it hot in here? Mississippi, it's supposed to be freezing.
All right, go ahead, Eric.
Okay. Well, I want to begin with this. Unbiased science is first based on observation. And from this observation, we develop a hypothesis. Then we separate science from fantasy by way of the falsification process. Now, this testing should potentially have the ability to prove the hypothesis wrong. If we don't have a test that can potentially prove this hypothesis wrong, then the hypothesis is unfalsifiable. And seriously, it may well be a fairy tale. Now, it's going to be clear tonight that none of the hypotheses that Mr. Warren can present to you tonight has withstood the falsification process. Now, he gives you nothing but unfalsifiable, pure imagination or bad science that is already proven wrong, and I will prove this. Now, regarding abiogenesis, here's what we observe. We observe that it simply does not happen. We observe that every single life we can point out has come about through birth, mitosis, seed sprouting, cloning, but nothing comes about through random unguided processes. Yet he will call abiogenesis a natural process when it's completely unnatural. It's contrary to everything we observe in nature. Now, our bodies are likened to living biological machines, as are simple cells. We observe built-in coded software called DNA, and it controls every function that these machines are capable of, including eating, reproduction. Now, Dr. Fred Hoyle likened abiogenesis, and he's an evolutionist, by the way. He likened abiogenesis to a tornado in a junkyard that blows together a 747 jet. But frankly, it's worse than this. That jet must then not just pop together, it has to pop to life through some unknown process, and eventually evolve consciousness and the ability to feed and reproduce itself. It's an absurd and unnatural proposal. Yet Mr. Warren believes this with absolute blind faith. So likewise, he is sold on evolution as well, even though his core tenets are proven false. And I can prove this evening. Example, Mr. Warren would have you to believe in what's known as the tree of life of common descent, which leads us back to what we know as the Luca, or the last unified common ancestor. On this issue, Dr. Craig Venter, who is most famous for being the first to map the human genome, recently informed an entire panel of atheist scientists, and he's an atheist too, that, quote, there is no tree of life of common descent, unquote, referring to it as a bush or a forest of life. And he said further, it's a relic of old, outdated science that just didn't work out, a fantasy in conclusion. So all of Mr. Warren's and Aaron Ra's pretty little phylogenetic trees are nothing but pure fantasy. This is what the most famous geneticist in the world, Dr. Craig Venter, has observed and boldly proclaimed. He will point to transitional fossils. But once again, this is pure imagination. It's not science. You can't put these alleged transitional fossils through a falsification process that has a fair potential to prove these hypotheses wrong. There's only one test that can potentially falsify a parent-child or family relationships, and that's DNA. And we don't have the DNA of any of these alleged transitional fossils. Transitional fossils are purely subjective imagination based completely on morphology. On this point, Dr. Colin Patterson, senior paleontologist at the British Museum of Natural History, said, is Archaeopteryx the ancestor of all birds? Perhaps yes, perhaps no. There's no way of answering the question. It's easy enough to make up stories of how one form gave rise to another, and to find reasons why stages should be favored by natural selection, but such stories are not a part of science, for there's no way to put them to the test. He further said, fossils may tell us many things, but one thing they can never disclose is whether they were ancestors of anything else. Mr. Warren is also going to have a problem because there is simply no time for evolution, and we will prove this tonight. Science has removed the scale of 70 to 80 million years for him to work with. He doesn't even have 1 million years because of the process of falsification. The thought that proteins and collagen, blood vessels, and blood cells could possibly last 70 million years had always been considered absurd, and they were right. It is absurd. But since the 1960s, we have been finding soft biological tissues in several dinosaur bones and horns. In her peer-reviewed paper testing the possibility of preserving these biological materials for 80 million years, Mary Schweitzer's best efforts came up way short. She was only able to extend the stability of the structures a mere 200%. She did this by using iron and oxygen from the hemoglobin of an ostrich, and no one has ever been able to preserve these proteins for a longer period of time than her published 200%. So now how do half-lives work? Let's consider C14, for instance, a half-life of 5,730 years, plus or minus 40 years. This means that if an object dies, then the amount of C14 that was originally in the organism would degrade by 50% after 5,730 years pass, or the first half-life. At the end of the second half-life, you're only going to have 25%. At the end of the third, you only have 12.5%. So as a general rule, nothing is carbon dated if it's suspected to be over 60,000 years old, because as a general rule, at the end of 10 half-lives, you should have virtually no C14 left. So now consider the collagen that was found in these bones. I could use vascular collagen with a half-life of only 60 or 70 days, but let's use the greater half-life of 117 years found in the collagen of cartilage. Now let's do their math. A 117-year half-life times 10 half-lives should leave you nothing at the end, but that's only 1,170 years. But if you multiply that by Schweitzer's 200-fold, then you still only come up to 234,000 years. You cannot make 80 million years with a 200-fold year increase, not even 1 million years. And to reach the 80 million year mark, she would have needed roughly 680,000-fold increase in the stability and only got 200. Now, that's what Mary Schweitzer observed. So by her peer-reviewed math, there is no time for evolution. A theropod dinosaur cannot evolve into a chicken in just 234,000 years. There's no time for man and chimp to evolve from a common ancestor in 234,000 years. Heck, they say we've been around that long. The Pakicetus, a little dog-sized land mammal, could not have evolved into the modern whale in just 234,000 years. It just didn't happen. It can't happen. And Mr. Warren offers you nothing but absurdities, failed hypotheses, and I'm sure he wants to deny that these falsifiable tests have actually been performed, but there they are right in front of us. And this is what we observe. So, as far as I'm concerned, this debate is already won hands down if Mr. Warren cannot prove that abiogenesis or the tree of common descent, tree of life of common descent, or an extinction 80 million years ago got rid of the dinosaurs. If he can't prove these things happen, then they're pure fantasy. The only question is, how many will willingly choose after tonight to continue believing in pure fantasy? Thank you very much.
And thank you. Let me make sure that I am. Y'all are hearing me, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you have 12 minutes. Let me start the timer here. Bear with me. Oh, my timer's not blocking.
Shall I go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead and do that while I fight with my timer.
Okay. share my screen. Just
And 12 minutes. When you start speaking, I will hit start.
We do see your screen, JL. So whenever you're ready.
Yep, it's up.
excellent. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much to the SCToon Show for hosting this debate, and thank you to my opponent for the challenge. I admit it was quite fun preparing for this one. I do appreciate everyone in the audience taking the time to listen in. I want to apologize ahead of time for the speed at which I will have to move, as there is a lot of dense information to cover and limited time to do so. I promise that I will be as clear and concise as I possibly can. The topic of this debate is the truth of the theory of evolution and the strength of the abiogenesis hypothesis. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Slide one. This presentation will be in two parts. Firstly, I will address how we know evolution to be true and the 5 best pieces of direct evidence for this. And secondly, why abiogenesis is the best hypothesis for the origins of life on this planet. Slide 2. Firstly, what is evolution exactly? It is the change in heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. These characteristics are the expressions of genes that are passed on from parent to offspring during reproduction through a process that we call natural selection. The 5 pieces of evidence I will address are homologous and vestigial structures, phylogenetics, biogeography, the fossil record, and direct observations both in the lab and in nature. First up is homologous structures. In the branch of biology, morphology, that which deals with the forms of living organisms and the relationships between their structures, homologous structures were one of the first pieces of evidence that led to the eventual conclusion of common ancestry. One of the best examples we can see is across these species, all of which are tetrapods, meaning 4-limbed. It includes all extant and extinct amphibians, reptiles, and synapsids, or mammals. The tetrapod limb is one of the major morphological adaptations that facilitated the transition from an aquatic to a terrestrial lifestyle in vertebrate evolution. This presentation has resulted in the homology of a single humerus, dual ulna and radius, followed by carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. This formation is ubiquitous in tetrapods. But as may be pointed out by the image on the right, those are the 4 limbs of cetaceans, not tetrapods. This is because, as the evidence shows, all living cetaceans share a common tetrapod ancestor from Indo-Hyas roughly 55 million years ago to mystocetes and odontocetes today. On the other side of this is vestigial structures. Vestigial structures occur when a feature is no longer subject to positive selection pressures. Robert Wiedersheim, professor of comparative anatomy and director of Freiburg's Institute of Anatomy, whose work in 1887 set the foundation for determining vestigiality in human beings, wrote in his academic treatise, The Structure of Man, an Index to His Past, vestigial organs are wholly or in part functionless and have lost their original physiological significance. Excellent examples of vestigiality in humans are pharyngeal gills, the appendix, the tonsils, the coccyx, wisdom teeth, the fibella on the back of the femur, and the plica semilunaris, or nictitating membrane, among many, many more. Vestigiality, however, also occurs and can be observed in other species, such as the pelvis and hind legs in whales, legs in snakes, tails on crabs, eyes on cavefish, elbow joints in penguins, and hollow bones and wings on ostriches. All of these changes, the development of homologous structures and the change in structures to vestigial, are observable evidence of evolution. But sometimes we have to look a little bit deeper to connect the dots of homology and vestigiality. For that, we go to molecular biology, specifically phylogenetics. The 2 images here are what are called phylogenetic trees. On the left side of the 3 families is determined by basic morphology. All tetrapods are included in the family of Eukaryota. The circle on the right, however, is what is called a high-resolution phylogenetic tree. Each entry along the outside is a fully sequenced genome. The connecting lines indicate how each genome is related to the ones around it. As we can see, each breaks down to what is called a eukaryotic LUCA, or the last universal common ancestor of eukaryotes. My opponent will most likely cite the work of controversial geneticist and businessman Craig Venter regarding the LUCA, but it must be pointed out that Venter's comments regarding a bush of life instead of a tree based on horizontal gene transfer were refuted shortly after he made them in person by Dr. Richard Dawkins. Venter retracted his statement immediately after. The link for that video with timestamp is in my citations. The high-resolution trees are developed through the field of computational phylogenetics, the application of computational algorithms, methods, and programs to phylogenetic analyses. The list shown here contains the many fields of work and analytical programs that contribute to the creation of these trees. All of them are developed from the observed evidence supplied by every contributing field of science. One of the key pieces of evidence in phylogenetics is mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is the chromosome found inside mitochondria and are found in all eukaryotic cells. It is passed exclusively from mother to offspring through the egg cell. Because animal mitochondrial DNA evolves faster than nuclear genetic markers, it represents a mainstay of phylogenetics. It is also what permits an examination of the relatedness of populations and has become vitally important in both anthropology and biogeography, as we will examine next. Biogeography is the branch of biology that deals with the geographical distribution of plants and animals, as detailed by Drs. Wilson and MacArthur's theory of island biogeography. It is one of the most important pieces of evidence in demonstrating evolution because more diverse biomes exist on islands than on mainlands. Island species allow for the procurement of statistical and predictive models in development, reproduction, and evolution that can be then applied to large-scale populations on the mainland. The importance of this was noted by paleontologist Mark Ridley in New Scientist magazine in 1981 in response to creationists attacking the fossil record in a way that demonstrated they didn't really understand what the fossil record was used for. Speaking of which, the fossil record has been instrumental in understanding evolution, providing evidence that past life existed, changed, survived changing environments, and went extinct. These documented changes are snapshot examples of evolution. While not the best evidence for evolution by itself, when it is combined with fields such as geochronology, the fossil record becomes vitally important in establishing the relative age of fossils uncovered within strata. Prime examples of evolution, concluded by phylogenetics, taxonomy, and the geologic record, are such structural changes as seen in the evolution of cetaceans from Pakicetus to the gray whales of today, and Hyracotherium, such as Eohippus, to the modern horse of today. It is important to note that geochronology plays an incredibly important part in the relative dating of fossils. Using uranium-lead dating, specifically uranium-238 to lead-206, allows us to date strata going back as far as 4.5 billion years. Zircon crystals incorporate uranium atoms into their crystalline structures while forming, while at the same time repelling lead. Any lead found in the crystals came from the uranium decay. The different half-lives of the 3 separate uranium isotopes means that this radiometric technique is useful between hundreds of millions to many billions of years. The predictive model developed by paleontologists using the fossil record and the geologic record also led to the discovery of Tiktaalik in 2004, a transitional species between fish and tetrapods. Genetic sequencing of the morphological predecessors of Tiktaalik, the lungfish of today, have helped us to develop the high-resolution phylogenetic tree that links ancient lobed fishes or sarcopterygian fish to the tetrapods of today. But when fossil evidence of transitional forms is not enough, we need merely go to the examples of genetically sequenced living transitional species, such as the worm lizard bipeds on the left, which is the last member of Amphisbaenia that retains its forelimbs and possesses vestigial hindlimbs. Amphisbaenia, demonstrated through genetic sequencing, is also a closer relative to the wall lizard seen on the right, indicating this is a transitional species of squamate between true lizards, Lacertilia, and snakes, Serpentes. Of one of the living descendants of Tiktaalik and one of the 6 remaining dipnoi or lungfishes is the giant Australian lungfish. Ancestors of this fish date back to the Devonian, or roughly 380 million years, as determined by geochronology. After sequencing, we also discovered that this happens to be the closest genomic relative with fins to humans. And lastly, direct observations of evolution in the lab and in nature. An important distinction here is to understand the difference between micro and macro evolution, otherwise known as small scale or single generation, and large scale or 3 or more generations. The 3 best examples of this are single generation polygenic selection in stickleback fish, documented in 2020, the rapid hybrid speciation of Darwin's finches within 3 generations, documented in 2018, and the many significant evolutionary events in the 70,000 generation plus long-term evolutionary experiment at MSU, which has been going on since 1988. And here we have images taken as part of the documentation of these observations. And that is a lot of petri dishes. While evolution has been demonstrated to be a fact, abiogenesis is a little trickier and as such remains in the hypothesis stage for now. Abiogenesis, or the natural process by which life has arisen from non-living matter such as organic compounds, is not controversial in mainstream science. While the finer details of the process are largely unknown, the latest findings, including the spontaneous formation of RNA, naturally bonding amino acids to form DNA, the presence of all basic elements for life existing on the planet, conclude that the transition from non-living to living entities was not a single event, but an evolutionary process of increasing complexity. To assert any other explanation for the origins of life on Earth, especially one that dismisses the current evidence and predictive models, one must have evidence to support that assertion. Claiming a god or any creating deity for that matter is true just because we don't yet fully understand the entire mechanism, or because we don't understand the work being done and the advancements made is nothing more than arguments from ignorance or incredulity. At the forefront of that work and those advancements are the scientists at McMaster University, who are currently conducting the best experiments utilizing the Planet Simulator, a device that replicates early Earth conditions, in order to understand how abiogenesis may have most likely occurred, and they're already up to the formation of protocells. And what is arguably the most important point of this entire debate, outside of all of the evidence and presentations, something that YECs or old Earth creationists often forget or ignore, is the crucial matter of a lack of mutual exclusivity between these concepts. Abiogenesis, evolution, and a creator god deity. How long? No,
Two.
are not mutually exclusive. We must remember this because the theory of evolution does not disprove a god. The hypothesis of abiogenesis does not disprove a god. A creator god could have easily used these processes to create and diversify life. To dismiss this extremely important distinction and not demonstrate how the evidence leads to another possible conclusion that is supported by the same evidence not only presents the false dichotomy of evolution or creation, but also begs the question concerning several points: the demonstrable existence of a creator, the demonstrable truth of the biblical account, the demonstrable truth of dispensationalism, and the demonstrable validation of one hermeneutic over any other hermeneutic. Thus, the burden of proof is upon my opponent to demonstrate without begging the question or resorting to conspiracy theory how the millions of evolutionary biologists, microbiologists, geneticists, naturalists, organic chemists, astrophysicists, paleontologists, oceanographers, and cosmologists the world over either stupidly or dishonestly came independently to conclusions regarding abiogenesis and evolution, conclusions which directly refute the magical, unmechanistic, God did it creationist claim. Thank you.
All right. 30 seconds left. Well timed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, we will have a 10-minute each cross-examination, and we will begin with Eric. Let me get my timer started here. 10 minutes.
It's actually JL starts the cross.
Okay. All right. Got 10 minutes. At your first word, I will hit start.
Excellent, thank you. Eric, I'm very good, just to kick this off, given what you're talking about, how do you reconcile your position with the work of leading experts and Christians like Francis S. Collins, head of the former head of the Human Genome Project and former director of the National Institutes of Health at Bethesda, who conclude that intelligent design and young Earth creation, old Earth creation are completely ludicrous? He's muted.
Eric? Yeah, you're muted.
Okay. First of all, I'm not a young Earth creationist again. And second of all, what is my position? You mentioned my burden of proof, but I don't have the burden of proof here this evening. You do. You have the burden of proof. You're the one that's claiming abiogenesis is true and evolution is true. These are your claims, not mine. So you're the one with the burden of proof, my friend.
This isn't the open discussion portion. This is 10 minutes each.
Right. He gets to cross-examine me for 10 minutes.
No, I asked you a question. That's my first question, is how do you reconcile your position with the work of leading experts and Christians like Francis S. Collins, who conclude that intelligent design, young Earth creationism, old Earth creationism, anything outside of what the evidence shows is completely ludicrous, as he was quoted as saying in a New York Times article in 2010.
Science rectifies me. My opening statement showed you that evolution is proven untrue by falsification. You're the one with the burden of proof here. Mary Schweitzer, her papers prove that there's no time for evolution. You don't have time for evolution if you only have 234,000 years to work with. You don't have time for the theropod dinosaur to evolve into a chicken, or for man and chimp to evolve from a common ancestor. You don't have that time in 234,000 years.
Given your time claim, how do you refute uranium to lead dating regarding zircon crystals, and how that information that we got on Earth was backed up by zircon crystals that were taken from the moon during the Apollo missions and confirmed the findings found here on Earth?
I'm betting that you don't even know much about uranium-lead dating or potassium-argon dating, for that matter. Do you know, for instance, that in order for you to test something through the uranium-lead method, you have to presuppose that what you are testing is at least 1 million years old?
No, you don't.
Sorry, let me just jump in up here. I think maybe we're having a little bit of a misunderstanding of the format. This section here is 10 minutes each for cross-examination.
Exactly.
JL
Wait, no, I thought
began
this was a 10-minute section of going back and forth, where I was asking questions and he was asking questions.
That's what I.
Yeah,
That's what I
that's
mean.
possible.
And JL, you began with a question, and so it's Eric's opportunity to answer that question, and we kind of went off on a rabbit trail. So if you want to reiterate, JL, your question that you asked at the beginning of your 10-minute cross-examination.
The very first question or my second question? Because he didn't answer my first question.
That's what I mean. The first question was not answered. So if you want to reiterate
I'm
that.
sorry, but it was answered.
Okay, going back to my first question. How do you reconcile your position with the work of leading experts and Christians like Francis S. Collins, who is the head of the Human Genome Project and is the former director of the NIH at Bethesda, one of the leading geneticists on the planet, who concludes by his work in the field that intelligent design and any form of creationism that is in direct contrast to the evidence at hand is completely ludicrous, as he was quoted as saying in a New York Times article in 2010.
Well, the same way Galileo would refute the Earth is flat. You know, Mary Schweitzer proves that you don't have time for evolution. Okay, you just simply do not have the time for it. Now, if you want to try to say her paper, which is accepted by everybody now, there's nobody that doesn't accept her explanation. I don't know if you've read her paper on the iron and oxygen preserving soft tissues in dinosaur bones, but she concluded she was able to take things with a 3-day structures with 3-day half-lives and preserve them 200%. In other words, for a little over 2 years. So she states right there in her paper in the abstract that it's 200% was what she was able to gain. In order to go back 80 million years, if you have a half-life, if you paid attention to my opening, if you have a half-life of 117 years, which we have with the collagen that's found in cartilage, then you multiply that by 10 half-lives when there should be none of it left. That's only 1,170 years. But if you multiply that by the 200-fold increase she found through study, through actual experimentation, and nobody else has been able to preserve these tissues longer than 200%, then all you have is 234,000 years. You don't even have 1 million years to work with.
Okay, so there's a lot of points that you addressed on there. And we've already brought up uranium-lead dating. We've already brought up uranium-lead dating. There's 3 different isotopes of uranium that help us to resolve in between hundreds of millions and billions of years. That the evidence that we concluded that was taken out of the Jack Hills area in Australia dates back to 4.5 billion. But given your position regarding Mary Schweitzer and dinosaur bones, that has been explained. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. So this is the latest that came out of Berkeley. The Berkeley lab helps reveal how dinosaur blood vessels can preserve through the ages. So this was published February 14th of 2020, and I have this citation in my citation. So we understand how that can happen. So
what was the actual experimentation that they ran on this? Is this another hypothesis, or did they actually run the experiments to prove what they're saying?
Well, that's why I've put this here, is that it explains how it's able to...
No, I'm asking you. What are the actual experiments they performed here?
Okay, so it breaks down. There's a lot. I don't want to eat up all the time because there's a lot of explanation here.
So in other words, this is just another hypothesis.
No, it's not another hypothesis. So
of course it is. If the main point of the experimentation is simply a hypothesis.
It's Okay, so essentially, it's an explanation of how iron reacts with things, and how during the mineralization process of fossilization, that the mineralization, given specific conditions, can create an almost sarcophagus effect around certain proteins, because collagen and porphyrins are proteins. Collagen and porphyrins.
That's the experimentation that Mary Schweitzer ran.
Can I finish?
Yeah, she actually did the experimentation.
I'm sorry, I paused the clock. Somebody's got a bit of an echo when you're not speaking. Please mute, and let's try to not overtalk. There's a little bit of overtalking, not too bad, but I will restart the clock now.
To conclude what I was saying, understanding iron, and iron being extremely reactive with other chemicals, resulting in oxidization. As the body keeps it bound it keeps it through iron homeostasis and metabolism to keep it from wreaking havoc on surrounding tissues, resulting in hemochromatosis or anemia. So post-mortem and deoxygenation of the body, iron is loose throughout the body, forming iron nanoparticles and generating free radicals, which are highly reactive and often associated with the natural aging process. Free radicals alter tissues on a molecular level, making them resistant to decay. They tie up proteins and cell membranes and make them more difficult for bacteria to feed on and destroy. And so...
You're preaching to the choir here.
Okay, so this
and
given the natural...
See, that's what you just read is he's just repeating what Mary Schweitzer proposed in her paper that she wrote before she did her experimentations. She actually wrote 2 papers on this. The first paper that she wrote was just presenting her hypothesis that iron plus the sedimentation may have allowed for these proteins to last 80 million years. Okay, she said that in her first paper. Her second paper was actually taking the hemoglobin from an ostrich and using the iron and oxygen in this with sedimentation, and she was able to get a 200-fold increase through actual experimentation. Okay, 200-fold increase. Now, like I said, if you take the half-life of collagen, 117 years for... Now, I could be unfair and use vascular collagen, because that's probably what they found, since they found actual blood veins, red blood cells, and etc. structures in these soft tissues. But I'm not going the cheap way. That's a 60 to 70 day half-life. I'm using the 117-year half-life of collagen that's found in cartilage. And if you multiply that by 10 half-lives, you should have none left. That's only 1,170 years. But if you multiply that by her 200-fold, and nobody has done experimentations that bring this past 200%, 200-fold, then all you've got is 234,000 years. You've got to do the math. You've got to think with a critical mind.
Okay,
that's
30 seconds left.
That's my argument with evolutionists. They don't think with a critical mind. They don't examine. They want to say, yeah, well, let's use falsification for God, but they don't want to use falsification when it comes down to their theories. And that's what you're avoiding here. And you're presenting, just like I told everybody at the beginning in my opening, you're presenting more hypotheses and absolutely nothing in the way of falsification.
All right, so next is Eric, your opportunity for cross-examination. And when you start, I will hit start.
Okay, you mentioned arguments of incredulity. Is it an argument of incredulity to ask you for the falsification processes, for the hypotheses that you've gone through and presented?
Yes, it does. It means you don't understand the scientific process.
Oh, so if I ask you, I don't understand the scientific process?
Can I finish the answer?
What is falsification?
Yeah, hey, Eric, please let him have an opportunity to at least finish his answer.
So it means that you don't have a full understanding of the scientific methodology.
Explain the scientific methodology. I explained it at the very beginning of my opening.
Again, he was mid-answer. Sorry.
I'm sorry. what I presented that in the opening. Tell me what is wrong with the scientific process. You make your observation, you present your hypothesis, and then you go through the falsification process, falsifying that hypothesis. And the falsification process is what?
So, to finish the answer.
What is a falsification process? You're under.
Let him answer, please.
Yeah, I'm asking him what is a falsification process.
But you did. He got 3 words in, and you cut him off.
He's saying I don't understand. Okay, I'm proving that that's not true. He's the one that doesn't understand. So, what is the falsification process?
Eric, when you go through the scientific method, okay, when you're going through the methodology.
What is the falsification process?
Falsification is a part of the experimental process.
And what is it?
It's when you can show how the situation is not to be true.
No,
okay?
Falsification is the attempt to prove your hypothesis is untrue. It has to potentially be able to prove your hypothesis untrue.
Eric.
So how is it unfair to ask you for the falsification process that your hypothesis?
If I can answer the question, please.
This is the question, how is it unfair of me to ask you for the falsification process these things went through?
Eric, please extend the same courtesy that JL extended to you and let him get his answer.
Okay, I'm just going to ask another question. You mentioned tetrapods.
Yes.
Tiktaaliks are said to be some of the earliest tetrapods, yes?
Which ones?
Tiktaaliks.
Tiktaalik, yes.
Yes.
Tiktaalik
Okay.
is one of them, yes.
What were they evolved from?
Sarcopterygian fish.
And to prove that.
We can demonstrate that by...
I didn't ask you to demonstrate it. I asked what is the proof for this?
Okay, so there's another breakdown that we have to explain, is that evolution is not about proving, it's about demonstrating it to be true. And so
No. What is the falsification process you went through to falsify whether or not Tiktaaliks are evolved from fish?
It's pronounced Tiktaalik.
What was the falsification process?
Okay, so what we do is we look at what we have. We look at...
In other words, you look at it. Okay, we understand how you develop your hypothesis. You look at it and you say, geez, it looks like this and it looks like this. So let's put them in between these two organisms on a phylogenetic tree because they are obviously related. Now I'm asking you, okay, you have your hypothesis based on morphology. What is the falsification process? DNA is the only way to actually prove whether or not one thing is related to another, or whether or not one thing evolved from another. If you go to a court of law, the judge is going to hear a woman say, look, my baby's short, fat, got little short arms, and so does this dude. So he's obviously the father. I want child support. The judge is going to say, no, I need the DNA. So what we need tonight is the DNA. Where's the DNA? Do you have the DNA to prove that the Tiktaalik is the offspring of a fish?
We don't need it.
Oh, you don't need it. So you don't need to put your idea through a falsification process. That's fine.
That's not
that's not science.
Eric.
Okay, so
Eric.
Darwin, you mentioned Darwin's finches as an example of evolution.
We're just going to jump. Okay, it's documented in 2018, correct?
Okay, what?
As documented in 2018, that paper released in 2018, rapid hybrid speciation.
What are you talking about?
It was documented in 2018. Rapid hybrid speciation within 3 generations was documented in Nature. That
okay, and what did they evolve into?
Eric, I'm sorry, but if you keep not letting him answer,
I'm asking you what they evolved into.
And I'm the moderator, so please at least let me speak. If the over talking keeps happening, I'm gonna have to ask Craig to mute you while.
No, that's pretty hard to do when I'm cross-examining him and he wants to take us on a wild goose chase.
He's just a few words in.
And I'm wasting my time arguing this with you. So I'd like for you to name a transitional fossil, any transitional fossil.
Tiktaalik was a transitional form.
Okay, and you have no way of proving that it evolved from that fish. You have no way to falsify that hypothesis.
We do know that. There are several
You
bodies.
know that because you assert it. You have no way to test it. You have no DNA from that. Okay,
I explained how we don't need DNA.
You explained how you don't need to put through the falsification.
Okay,
Eric.
Craig, please
So-
mute everybody, and let me say a few words. Okay, the question was how he's demonstrating that that this transition happened. So, JL, please answer the question. Take 30 seconds to a minute.
Pardon me, but that was not the question.
Eric will be muted for this answer.
Pardon me, but that's not the question.
Okay, reiterate your question, and then
Why are you soft-pedaling this?
I'm asking you to give the same courtesy that JL gave you to give him time to answer the questions. So reiterate the question that you wanted to ask, and then we'll give JL time to answer.
So how much of my time have we eaten up so far in arguing back and forth on whether or not I can ask these questions?
The problem was not that that you were not given
He's
time
not
to ask
answering the questions I asked. That's the problem.
Ask the question, please, and then we'll give him time to answer.
Okay. Well, I've already proven the point that none of these things gone through a falsification process, nor does he think his pet theories have to go through a falsification process.
That was not a question.
Okay. Why is it that we run several radiometric tests on any given artifact?
All right, JL answer, and Eric will be muted for at least 30 seconds.
In order to understand its relative age.
Okay,
It depends upon what we're testing, If we're testing, like, there's different, it specifically depends upon what we're testing. We can use carbon-14 for some. We can use potassium argon for others.
You're
But for things that are extremely old,
You're not understanding the question.
But for things that are extremely old, we have to use better, more accurate terms of dating, which one of the best ones are uranium lead dating. And there are 3 different uranium isotopes, and all of them decay into lead. And so we know this. So when we found zircon crystals and we understand how zircon works during formation, then we can take that information, and then we had it here on Earth. But luckily, what was one of the benefits of the Apollo landings was that the samples that they brought back also contained zircon crystals. We can run those exact same tests, but the benefit of this is that the moon is tectonically inactive. And because the moon is tectonically inactive, then the surface rocks that are on the moon are the rocks that have always been there since the formation of the moon. And so we know we're not getting rocks from down deep. So we can look at these and we can check out the formation of these crystalline structures. And we know that zircon repels lead and attracts uranium atoms. So any lead that is within the zircon crystal is from the decay of that uranium. And then we just measure the half-life. And because we know the half-life of the 3 different uranium isotopes, thanks to the work.
I knew this was going to be a one-sided thing because, every one of you guys are part of the group called Nemesis that mass reported me for saying things like Jeff disappeared.
I'm not a part of any group called Nemesis. But anyway, to finish that up, we use those known half-lives, to create a chart as to how we can, and it depends upon which lead you're using, but the lead we use for the Earth is specifically uranium-238 to lead-207 radiometric dating, and that decay rate.
I'm obviously not going to be able to cross-examine for my 10 minutes.
4.5 billion years. So I'm
obvious, and I don't even get to tell him to answer the question I asked, not answer the question he wants me to ask. So here's the question I was asking. Many times we test the same artifact with several different methods of testing. Why? Like, for instance, uranium lead or potassium argon, etc., etc., etc.
We radiometric date things to find out their age.
And why do we use several different dating methods to do that on one particular item?
Because different dating methods work differently on different things.
Because different dating methods give you different dates, and you actually date shop using radiometric dating. You date shop. Now, let me ask you something. Why would you assume that something is going to be 1,000,000 years old before you even test it?
We don't assume that.
Of course you do. You have to assume before you use uranium lead that the rock you're testing is 1,000,000 years old or older. No, you have to assume.
No,
you
also have to conclude. No, Eric, we conclude.
No, you have to assume it.
Eric,
you also have to assume. Let me give you an example. They use potassium argon dating on a piece of the dome from Mount St. Helens. Creationists collected this and turned it in. They ran the potassium argon method, and they said, oh, well, this is at least 3,000,000 years old. And then they were busted because it wasn't even 20 years old. It was formed during the Mount St. Helens blow. And the reason they were given was you can't use the potassium argon method. It's not reliable for anything under 600,000 years old.
Which is why we use uranium lead.
So there you're admitting now. Uranium lead, you have to assume even worse, that it's at least 1,000,000.
No, we don't have to assume
that. Yes, you do. I have the citation right there in my notes.
Eric, considering this is you asking me questions, if I can answer that, if I can actually.
Well, you're just proving you don't know, and you can Google it right now.
Eric, if I can please address that. Okay, so yes, what we have discovered, the reason we use different radiometric dating techniques, okay, is the reason because of the particular half-lives of the particular thing. Now,
okay, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Sure.
No, the problem was I was trying to speak and I was not, for some reason, unable to unmute myself. So I was trying to cut in there the whole time. Just wrap up that, and then we're going to go to the next section. So take about 30 seconds and wrap up that answer.
Okay, so given the laws in geophysics, okay, and I do apologize to the audience. The name of it escapes me, but there is a law, and I can't remember the name, where essentially that which is above that which is higher is younger, and that which is lower is older than what it is. And I can't remember the name specifically off the top of my head because I didn't memorize it for this. But utilizing that law, okay, then we understand that things are older the lower you go. All right, so we realize that we need to use particular half-lives in order to determine the ages of particular things. Now,
so would you like to let him just finish up for the night? I'm obviously not going to get my cross-examination in. Mr. Toon, do you approve of this?
No, I think you've been pretty rude. But the next step here is to have an open discussion. But since it seems that you can't not interrupt, we're going to have 2 minutes alternating for each people. So we're going to start that with you, Eric. So you get 2 minutes as soon as you start talking. And I don't know if Cliff has the timer ready to go, but
well, this certainly is no debate. Okay, this is an absolutely united affair.
2 minutes starts now.
I'm going to stop muting myself because sometimes I can't unmute. So yes,
this certainly is not a debate, and I would like to challenge Mr. Warren to come onto my channel anytime, and we'll have a real moderator.
We'll be able to get to that at the end, talking about how we're going to go forward.
No, I'm obviously not going to be able to get my cross-examination in.
I actually gave you. Please mute him, Craig. I'm the moderator. When I speak, I should be able to have the opportunity to finish what I'm saying. You were given ample time in the last section. I've actually paused. You were given probably 3 or 4 extra minutes because I had the timer paused each time that I had to interrupt you to ask you to please extend courtesy to JL. So next we're going into 15-minute open discussion. please let each interlocutor have time to answer your questions.
It is going to be 2 minutes alternating.
Yeah.
We're not even going to stick to the format you gave me.
No, you
Because
don't
there's
have
so much over talking.
Yeah, you don't have the ability to not interrupt. So
I didn't have the ability to cross-examine.
Yeah, exactly. I know that's a problem. So 2 minutes starts as soon as you start talking. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, it's not much of a debate if we don't get to haggle this out, and I didn't even get a chance to cross-examine. But let's do this. Let's haggle about this for a minute. Why is it that you don't want to present anything that's been falsified? Is it because you have nothing?
Is that the end of your 2 minutes?
Okay, so it's not that I have presented anything. The things that I presented have been falsified. They've gone through the falsification process because that is the process. That's part of the process of getting to a theory. It's already withstood the falsification process. That is a part of the scientific method. That's how we get through that. Anything that is declared to be a theory has already made it through the falsification process, such as like the theory of general relativity, the theory of quantum electrodynamics, the germ theory of disease. All of these have already been falsified. They've already gone through this. This is why I presented evidence for what we know to be true. I don't have to present things that are false because it's already been done. I presented the conclusions based upon that. Your lack of understanding of that is just an argument from incredulity.
All right, is that the end of your 2?
That's it.
Okay, Eric, I will reset the clock for 2 minutes.
So you admit that you have no falsification process to present for any of this stuff, for abiogenesis or for evolution. You have nothing to present this in the way of a falsification process, which is what I predicted in the very beginning. You have nothing but hypotheses. You don't even know what the scientific method is. You say, well, it's a theory, so it's already been falsified, and yet you can't point to one falsification test, one process of falsification here. To declare, for instance, that a fossil really is a transitional fossil. What falsification process has it undergone? I'll tell you what it's undergone. They look at it. They dig it up. They look at it, and they say, oh, well, this has qualities of this animal, and this has qualities of that animal. And so we're going to put it on a phylogenetic right in between, and we're going to call it a transitional fossil and swear it's true, even though we have no DNA to falsify this. And you're going to call that a falsification process. Do you know the difference even between your observation, your hypothesis, and your falsification process? I don't think you do, because from what you just said, they're all the same.
You have 45 seconds left.
Well, I'm just going to continue to say that this has been awfully one-sided. If you can't cross-examine somebody and get their answers for something, and get the answers that you asked for.
Okay, JL, 2 minutes.
Okay, so I really don't know how to respond to that. He obviously, Eric, you really don't understand what the scientific methodology is. You keep wanting to focus on falsification, and falsification is a part of the process of going there. Now, it is referred to as the theory of evolution, okay? The same as the germ theory of disease, the same as the theory of general relativity. That means it has withstood rigorous testing to the point that this is what is fact, that is what it is. There are papers written by individuals like Stephen Jay Gould, one of the leading evolutionary biologists and paleontologists, who legitimately has stated, who studied, and he's, the purveyor of punctuated equilibrium, if you want to get into that. But he himself has stated that there are transitional fossils all throughout, not at the species levels, but through the population levels. This lack of understanding you have of the fossil record is demonstrated. Stephen Jay Gould has spoken to this. As a matter of fact, I have the quotes here somewhere. I can pull them up. But when it comes down to it, we've already gone through that process. If you want specific individual ones, you can go look for them. But the idea was that we observe it. It can be demonstrated. We've demonstrated it in the lab. We have observed it in the lab. We've observed it in nature. These are the things that go into all of the stuff I cited in my presentation. Was all the evidence for why it is. You need to be able to refute all that evidence given what is presented. You need to say why homology doesn't lead to this conclusion. Why does vestigiality not lead to this conclusion? Why are the changes in physiological structures not evidence for evolution? That is your burden of proof. Go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, no, you still have 30 seconds is what I was saying.
Oh, yeah. So that is your burden of proof, Eric. You need to see how these are the conclusions that we came to. This is the evidence we have, the conclusions that we came to, the testing that we came to do, that we went through to get to these conclusions. You need to demonstrate, when saying that it is not a theory, that evolution is still just a hypothesis, why they got it wrong. Okay? You just misstating the scientific method is not the way to do that. Or you just demand falsification. Like, what is the falsification of this? It's already been done. You need to break that down as to why it doesn't work.
That was time.
Thank you.
If it's already been done, why can't you present it? You can't present it because it hasn't been done. You cannot. I can point to any transitional fossil out there, and you can't show me where it's undergone a falsification process. I don't care if they call it the theory of evolution. They can call it whatever they like.
Okay,
the point is,
wrap up your point, and then we're going to go to a break.
So I don't get my 2 minutes now either, huh?
No, sir. I said please wrap it up, and then we'll go to the break.
So you're interrupting me.
We have about 7 minutes left before the break.
Okay. Well, then finish your 2 minutes, and then we'll go back to JL. I think our clocks are out of sync.
Well, if you want to call this a fair and honest debate, you're fooling yourself. You're a joke. This is not a fair or an honest debate. We're not going by the format that I agreed to, that you guys offered. We're not going by that at all. So that's okay.
We're struggling to stick to that format, but you keep over.
No, we're not struggling. You're struggling to shut me up. So that's cool. Let me say this. He has not presented one single thing in the way of falsification process. He won't even address the question. He simply says, I don't understand the process. When it's him that doesn't understand the process. You cannot, I'm telling you right now, you cannot tell me that these transitional fossils have undergone any kind of falsification process. The falsification processes that have been run, like, for instance, on the soft tissues of the dinosaur, prove that you don't even have 250,000 years to work with, dude. You don't even have that. And yet you can't deny that. Now, you're trying to say I have the burden of proof? Well, that's a lazy, sleazy claim, because the truth is, if you make the claim, it's your burden of proof. You have the burden of proof to present the falsification processes these have gone through. I understand the hypothesis. I understand.
JL, 2 minutes.
Okay, so going through that, he keeps going back to this, we don't have the time for evolution, and he's absolutely incorrect on that one. As demonstrated, but that's why we use uranium-lead dating when we're dating the Earth, and then that's how we date the geologic, so using those isotopes, that's how we determine the age of the geologic strata in which we find fossils. We date those fossils to that geologic strata. That is how we know the dates of those fossils. And then we look at the morphological changes through the fossil record. But as I stated in my presentation, this is why the fossil record is not the best evidence for evolution. Typically, creationists don't really understand the fossil record. That's why they attack it incorrectly, which is why you need to attack stuff like Mark Ridley said, like the theory of island biogeography, or the hierarchical structures of taxonomy. This is better evidence. This is where I'm going to. But concerning the age of the Arab, concerning the ages of these things, we do have the time. The Jack Hills area, and not to in Australia, not to mention the Greenstone areas, and there's a harbor in Canada. That these are some of the oldest areas of crust on the planet that we can date these. We have dated these to 4.5 billion years. This information is confirmed by lunar samples made from the formation of the moon. They confirm what we found here on Earth. They also correspond to interstellar, to meteorite data that we have pulled going to the age of the solar system. So we have a model that works here. And regarding the T-Rexes, It's already explained. I've cited the paper that explains where at Berkeley, where they explained how through the mineralization process can create a sarcophagal effect and allow those collagens and porphyrins, which are proteins, to polymerize and essentially be held in place for that extended period of time. This is understood.
Okay. Eric, take your 2 minutes, and we'll give JL 2 minutes. And then we'll go into the break.
Well, he keeps saying this, but then he wants to not produce any falsification that it's actually gone through. And I'm the only one that has produced the falsification tests that any of these things have gone through. They're included in my notes, and they're turned in, and they should be up. So I want to ask, does he say Mary Schweitzer is wrong? And that they were able to prolong the stability of these proteins by 680,000 fold? They were only able to get 200 fold. That's 234,000 years. To get 80 million, you need 680,000 fold. You don't have that, nor can you produce anything at all that gives us that. Then you want to say we have transitional fossils. We've proven it. No, you haven't. And you won't produce any falsification tests for even one of them. And like I said, Dr. Colin Patterson, who was the senior paleontologist for the British Museum of Natural History, in his book, he didn't include any photos of transitional fossils. And he said the reason for this was because they don't have any way to test these things. That it's a fantasy. It is a fairy tale to present such stories because there's no way to put them to the test. And that comes from a scientist who's written books on evolution. So you don't have any of this. I said at the beginning, you weren't going to produce any falsification tests, and I was right. Now all we're getting is this is why you're not going to.
Well, you still have 10. Do you want to use it or? Okay, JL, take 2 minutes, and then we're going to go to break.
Yeah, really, it's. I think my intro pretty much spelled it out well enough, and I think Eric's. I think Eric, I don't really think you understand what the scientific method is and the process that we go through, and how we come to what a theory is, and how abiogenesis is still a hypothesis. So to keep this on task, to keep us on the point of the debate, so we know it's the theory of evolution because we know it to be true. It comports with reality, and that's where the best evidence leads us to. That's the conclusion. Abiogenesis is still a hypothesis. It is in the hypothesis stage, but people are currently working on that to demonstrate most likely what was the version of it. Obviously, it's very difficult. No one was there to observe abiogenesis in the beginning. That's why it is still a hypothesis. It's going through the process of knocking down what's not true, finding out what most likely is true. And that work is being done. You claiming it's not the fact just because, as I stated in my intro, in my presentation, you claiming it's not the case just because we don't understand it or because we're not done with the work on it is just an argument from incredulity or an argument from ignorance. That's where that comes from. That's that logical fallacy, is that you're basically saying, because this hasn't been proven to be true, it must be this other thing. And it's not, because that's also a false dichotomy, which is, as I also indicated in my intro, these are the things that you needed to address. You need to address why these things are mutually exclusive when they are not. You need to show how it's the only possible way given the evidence. And this is why the burden of proof lies with you. I only needed to present evidence, but the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate why it's not the case. Go ahead.
Okay. Actually, that was the end of that round. I don't know, Toon. Do you want to give Eric a short bit of time to?
I'm sure. If you wanted to wrap the thought up before we go to the break.
Take 1 minute, and then we'll go to break.
Well, he keeps saying, I don't understand the scientific process, but I've outlined it from beginning to end. You have your observation, you build your hypothesis, and then you run your falsification tests. And then that's what separates fantasy from science. And so far, all he's presented tonight is fantasy and excuses as to why he's not going to present the science. He can't produce the falsification processes for any of these things that we have discussed so far. And I knew that this would be a one-sided affair. I told my friends I expected it, but I don't care. Let me tell you why. Because it's obvious that he has to go to great lengths here
15 seconds.
to not have to answer these questions. I have a list a mile long as my arm, of questions that I was not able to ask this evening. So, that's okay. I really do not care. I think that he does not have any of these falsification processes.
Into the break. I don't know if we discussed how long we were going to take for the break. Does anybody have a preference? 5 minutes or so?
I'll just, however long it takes, I guess, to just have a little chat here, I guess.
Yeah.
So if JL or Eric, if you need to hit the bathroom or something or whatever, you won't miss anything. So, well, it's been spirited so far. If you're following along, we do have a calendar page. I don't know if I updated it yet, but next week we did have scheduled a professional wrestling debate. That's been moved back. We're maybe going to have Cliff. You're going to maybe be in a debate with, what were you thinking? Maybe. Right?
Oh, Will Turbot. We have a time, and I'm just waiting for him to confirm that he's good with that time and date. We're looking at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 week from today on Saturday, and the topic will be: are conspiracy theories good for? Is it good for an individual to be a conspiracy theorist or not? My position is that no, it's not good to be a conspiracy theorist. In general, is it good or bad to? I'm talking about things like, are there reptilians running the government, like that type of thing. His position is that yes, it's good for people to have that level of conspiracy theory.
Interesting.
I'm just waiting for confirmation.
That sounds fun. We do have a couple others. We have some things in the works about whether or not doctors or nurses work harder. That will be interesting. I think it would be between a doctor and a nurse. And another one that's in the works. We're working on a vegan one, and a one about toys. And whether or not something, I don't quite understand it yet, whether or not like replica toys hurt the toy market or something. The one of the people, it has a pretty tight schedule, so that it's going to be a challenge. So anyway, that's what we've got coming up. Cliff, do you got anything coming up on your personal channel?
Yeah, I'll probably put out a video tomorrow, and then I was actually challenged to a debate. I think we're going to try to do it over here. I think all of my future debates will be over here. It was the guy that debated Artie recently. He played his courtroom audio from his most recent hearing. His name is I can't remember the name of the guy's channel. He's a sovereign citizen. Of course, he says that he's not. He's got a court date coming up, and he says that he will be willing to come to my channel, basically do the same thing, play the courtroom audio, and we'll discuss it as it goes through, and kind of pick apart where I think he's being a sovereign citizen and he thinks that he's not. So I think that they got really good numbers on Artie's channel. So when he offered it to me, I jumped right on it. But I think we're going to try to schedule that over here on this channel, like I said.
Awesome. Well, now it is time for let me tell you one more thing. I'm sorry. I was going to say, I have on my channel, FTFE, who's producing today, is going to be on my channel on Tuesday, and it's a debate on whether or not sextants work on the globe or on flat Earth. because flat earthers say that they can't work on the globe. So Hip Hop Hippie, also known as Bumpy Earther, is going to present how sextants work on flat Earth. Craig will be explaining the opposite. And then I have a challenge for them. I'm going to give them 2 sextant measurements, and both of them are going to use either globe or flat to determine where on Earth the observer was when the measurements were taken. I don't know how Hip Hop Hippie / Bumpy Earther is going to do it. I am intrigued because I keep sending emails and he's like, yep, I'm in. I'm like, how the heck are you going to do it? Anyway, that's coming up. That's going to be great. That's Tuesday on my channel. Linked in the description. That's FDFE, who I don't know. FDFE will be sure to get your channel linked in there as well. So, okay. Now we're on to question and answer from the audience. So if you have questions, you can tag RizQ or a super chat. We'll get read out as well. So to start out with, I don't know, maybe both of you can answer this one. It's from John Rapp.
Real quick before we do that, I think we should maybe dial in the parameters a little bit better based on where we're at so far. So when we get a question, what do we want to do? Whoever the question's directed at, give them a 2-minute answer.
Sure.
Okay. So when the question's asked, I'll start the timer and we'll go from there.
All right. And well, since this is for both of you, maybe 1 minute each.
2 each. Okay.
The question is, very important question. Does the soft tissue taste like chicken or not?
Whoever speaks first, I'll start the timer.
Actually, given that technically it's a polymer, it's basically fossilize into a polymer, it probably would taste very plasticky.
Okay, and I'll reset for another 1 minute for Eric.
I think if the audience can't ask a more intelligent question than that, then they ought not ask a question. That's my personal opinion. So the truth is, what they found were blood vessels, blood veins, in other words, collagens, cells, cell-like structures, and the osteocytes that lay down the cells. These are things that they found, actual biological tissues that up until now would have been presumed absurd to find in a fossil. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is they think that the first time that these things were found was around 2005. But the truth is, they've found these things since the 1960s, and they've shut up about it. They've kept it under wraps and not told anybody about this until the 2000s. So there is a reason.
All right.
That was time.
Eric, you might have missed it. That was a joke. Okay. Next one from the Logical Hillbilly. It's not a question, so I'll just read it. Eric's strategy: ask a question, interrupt answer, make lame excuse, repeat ad nauseum. A lot of people were saying that. We've got one from C. Mitch Play.
I'm sure he's part of your echo chamber.
This is to you, Eric. Could Eric please answer what sort of time frame he believes in? Is it an instantaneous creation or a gradual but not full evolution? That's a good question.
Well, my belief system, I'm an old Earth creationist. I believe that this Earth has undergone cycles of life and extinction, and I believe that's proven over and over in the scriptures. You have this mentioned in the first chapter of Genesis. If you take it back to the Hebrew language in the second verse, you have a repeat of this in Jeremiah chapter 4. And then in Revelation, we actually have 2 more extinction events in the future that are mentioned, and another cycle of life following these extinction events. I frankly don't know how God created this. We're not given that. And to be honest, I'm going to be fair and honest about this. I didn't know for a long time whether or not I wanted to believe in evolution or not. To me, if evolution were true, it would not have been a any sort of a proof that God is not true. I approached evolution from an open mind. The point is, none of this stuff, all of this is pure hypothetical, and the things that have been falsified have undergone through falsification tests have been proven wrong. And most of these hypotheses are not even falsifiable, like the transitional fossils.
30 seconds.
For instance. So to be absolutely honest, I don't know. Where God is not dogmatic, neither am I. But I will say that if evolution were to be proven true, I would believe it, and it wouldn't hurt me at all. It wouldn't hurt my faith one bit. If I could see the falsification processes that these hypotheses have gone through, I'd have no problem believing it. But he says, see, this is another proof.
That's time.
Okay, excellent. A question from Deadly Dave. Eric, does Mary Schweitzer believe in old Earth creationism?
Mary Schweitzer used to be a young Earth creationist, but I believe that she's changed her stance. And she's probably now an old Earth creationist, from my understanding. Although I haven't seen her come right out and say this, some of her remarks have led me to believe that. So I don't know. That would be a question you'd have to put to Mary. She does answer a lot of questions, by the way.
Okay. You still got a minute and a half if you wanted to use it to elaborate. Okay. All right, Tim.
All right. From Draco Fire says, I have a question for the guest. You claim that JL only has a hypothesis. I counter by asking you this. Where is your positive evidence to support the position that evolution is false?
Where is my positive evidence? Well, you see, there again, they don't know the scientific method. And as neither does my opponent, evidently, he doesn't understand that if he's going to present a positive claim, then the onus is on him to show these falsification processes and to prove it true. What I've done tonight is point out that he can't point these things out, and the things that have been tested, like the soft dinosaur tissue, for instance, and Craig Venter saying that there is no tree of life of common descent. These are rather a bush of life and a forest of life. These things prove the hypotheses wrong. Okay, these are hard scientific tests. Another thing that we've come up with, creationists have gathered many samples, scores of samples of dinosaur bone, and they've sent them in for C14 tests. Absolutely every single one, even though they came from different digs, different dinosaurs, different museums. Every single one of them came back C14 rich. Every single one of them, from 9,000 to 40,000 years old. So that we have several lines of scientific evidence, from Mary Schweitzer to the C14 tests to Craig Venter, proving he doesn't have time for evolution.
Can I?
I think so, because I believe that the answer was unresponsive to the question. So
So I can't speak to what Mary Schweitzer is. I've never heard her state that she's a young Earth creationist or an old Earth creationist. Although I have read over her work, and she has never once refuted the age of the dinosaurs that she's looking at. That she has always confirmed it to be 65, 66 million years old, especially the one that she worked on that was shown to be pregnant. So, not to mention the work that she was doing was in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Whereas the paper that I presented that explained, that paper came out of Berkeley, that was published in 2020. So the last, so yeah, these things are understood.
Okay.
All right.
Next question.
And then from Draco Fire. Just a second, Eric. You'll get this. According to your definition of falsification, where is your falsified evidence?
Well, first of all, let me clarify that Mary Schweitzer's paper from that dealt with the preservation of soft tissues was from 2014. And since then, not one paper has been presented that gives us more than a 200-fold increase in preservation. Not a single one. So I can pull up. No, your citations are simple hypotheses, setting forth hypotheses and not tests, not falsification tests. So I'm sorry, I'm being asked for a falsification test for what specifically?
It wasn't clarified.
Yeah, well, there's nothing that I need to present in the way of a falsification test. The onus is not on me. The onus is on my opponent to present these falsification tests to show that they have been. See, that again, that's showing he doesn't understand the process of science. Neither does my opponent, because the onus is on him. And whenever you, I know all the observations that we go by, whether it's DNA, transitional fossils, what have you. I understand all of the observations. I understand the hypotheses, and I'm fine with them. They're allowed to present any hypothesis that they would like. I'm fine with that. But when it comes to the falsification process, to put these hypotheses through, that's where they come up short. I called it from the beginning. He wasn't going to be able to present a single one, and he hasn't. And he's trying to put the onus on me. That's not how science works, sir.
10 seconds.
I have a quick question. I just got to throw it out there. Eric, has the theory of general relativity or the germ theory of disease or the theory of quantum electrodynamics, have these been falsified?
That has nothing to do with our subjects tonight.
It actually does, because
no, that has not a thing to do with our subjects tonight. Thank you.
We're in audience questions.
Eric, it goes to the process of defining what a theory is.
Gentlemen.
So at least you're admitting.
Please mute them. We are in. This is audience questions. If you have something to present like that, you'll have opportunity in your closing.
Well, at least he is admitting now that none of his.
No. I wanted to. I'm just pointing out one very, very simple thing. So these other theories have been falsified. They have been through the falsification process, and that is why they are theories.
Okay.
My curiosity is
JL.
I know that everybody's really passionate, but we have to stick to our format.
Yeah. All right. Question from Draco Fire to Eric. If the Earth is old, why can't evolution happen? And then, you'll have to unmute.
Like I said, I didn't come into this with a bias. I came into my studying evolution from an unbiased point of view because I simply wanted to know, is it true? So I don't have a problem with it. I'm not saying that from my point of view, it could not have been true when I began studying this. I began studying, I went beyond the textbooks. I went beyond the claims. I read over 1,500 peer-reviewed articles dealing with evolution, abiogenesis, the Big Bang, and etc. Over 1,500 peer-reviewed articles. I've gone beyond the textbooks. I didn't want to see what the claims are. I know what the claims are. I wanted to see what the observations were. I wanted to see that the hypotheses were built on. And then I wanted to see what falsification tests they underwent to prove whether or not these things are feasible or likely or possible or probable. Okay? And the truth is, they haven't. What has been falsified, gone through a falsification process, has failed. For instance, let me present something to you. We have the evolution of mankind. We have Neanderthal. I wanted to bring this out during our cross-examination, but I wasn't allowed. We have Neanderthal, we have modern man, we have Denisovan. Now, they're not all called by the same, they're all classified. They're classified as different species. Now, the definition of species are like beings, like life forms that are capable of reproducing fertile offspring. Now, we did that with Denisovan and Neanderthal, and yet it's more evolutionists want to claim that we're different species.
Okay, that was
Right.
time.
Okay, we got a super chat from Pronon1990 to Eric that says, Eric, why are you so rude? I'm a Christian and I'm more respectful.
Well, if I'm not allowed to cross-examine, I think pointing that out is not rude, but honest. I came into this with expectations that I would be able to cross-examine. Now, if he's going to lead us down a road of BS, then I should have a right to interrupt and rephrase my question. And even when I rephrased my question, he was still answering the wrong question, not the question I asked. And then when you guys, my moderator here, put the question before him, he didn't ask the question that I asked. He rephrased it in a completely different way. So, I think fair is fair, and what I agreed to was not allowed. So I don't think that pointing that out is rude. You may disagree. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to push back on that because you actually had extra time because I paused several times.
No, he had extra time.
No.
Yes.
He
had extra time to answer questions that I didn't ask.
Yeah, he took the 10 minutes. You took about 13. So next question.
Yeah.
All right.
And
again from Pronon1990 for 199 says, Eric, how heavy are those goalposts?
What do I keep moving? I'll have to explain that. If you don't understand the scientific procedure, that's not on me. I'm not moving the goalpost. It's my opponent that's saying that he doesn't have to follow scientific procedure. He doesn't have to present the falsification. That's okay. He claims that the onus isn't on him for his claims. That's okay.
Since you made an accusation against JL, I think you should have 1 minute to respond.
I didn't take a minute to answer.
Okay, you took about 45 seconds, so let's give him 45 seconds to respond. Whenever you're ready, JL. If you want to. If you don't want to, then we'll go to the next question.
Okay. Yeah, it's conspiratorial thinking. I don't know even how to respond.
All right.
Conspiratorial.
All right, next question.
All right, next question from Batman for 10 pounds. Wait a second, Batman.
That's heavy.
That's not Batman. I'm Batman. Anyway, says Eric, I say you don't understand science. Science doesn't prove anything. The basic scientific method is 1, observation, 2, hypothesis, 3, prediction from hypothesis, 4, experiment, and 5, evaluate. Do you agree?
Read that one more time, please.
The basic scientific method: 1, observation, 2, hypothesis, 3, prediction from hypothesis, 4, experiment, and then 5, evaluate.
And what was his beginning of that?
He claims that you do not understand science and that it does not prove anything.
Well, let me start there. You see, what we have hard science and we have soft science. Now, for instance, hard science would be things like chemistry. With chemistry, I can present the hypothesis that if you combine water with carbide, you create acetylene. Now, that's my hypothesis. Now, then I can take water and acetylene and I can combine them 1 billion times and prove that it creates acetylene. Now, with evolution, you can't do that. With transitional fossils, you can't do that. With a lot of forms of the hypotheses that go into evolution, you can't do that. People will define evolution a cheap way. They'll say, it's change over time. Well, no. If that's true, if that's all evolution is, then evolution is a piece of nail rusting. Or evolution is me being born and then growing old, okay? No, what evolution really is, the way it's taught today, evolution is the tree of life of common descent that takes us all the way back to the Luca, the last unified common ancestor, which is said to be the ancestor of every plant, insect, and living thing on Earth. And then that goes back to abiogenesis. And abiogenesis is an absolutely unnatural process. So, you know, I'm saying you don't understand what science is. Science, we have theoretical science, we have hard science, we have hard science and soft science, in other words. And evolution is a soft science where you can just make any claim, like they do with transitional fossils, and call it a fact and say, evolution's a fact. Well, no, it isn't.
Okay.
All right. So that was a yes/no question. Did you want to have a yes or no?
That was the best answer I can give. That's a thorough answer.
Okay.
JL's got nearly 0 questions, so should we give him 1 minute to give a crack at that question?
You know,
Hey, I'm willing to. I'm willing to field any question out there. I'm not afraid of a question.
that wasn't for you. That was for JL. Was the but there's one coming up if we want to.
Yeah,
wait.
Okay.
No,
All
feel
right.
free to
Press on.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, there was a couple things he got wrong in his answer, but
well, tell you what, I was wrong. That's just something I misread that. So maybe you do want to take a minute on that.
Yeah, I'll put 1 minute on the clock whenever you start.
are you talking about for me?
Yeah,
Yes.
if you wanted to give a crack at that last question.
Oh well, no. There was a couple things that Eric got wrong in there. It's just like
by all means.
Regarding the Luca. The Luca is the last, like for eukaryotes, is like the last universal common ancestor. Is not nearly when we talk about the Luca, we talk about the actual like animal that everything currently living can be traced back to, not the original purveyor. So we're talking,
I didn't say it was the original purveyor.
You said of all plants, organisms like that, and that's not true.
Everything that currently lives, yes.
No, not everything, because there are 3 different families. There's eukaryotes, there's archaea, and there's bacterium. So there's multiple different Lucas for all of these families. So that's what we're talking about. And now that's just on your misunderstanding of the Luca. But when it comes down to it, evolution is changing heritable characteristics of a biological population over successive generations. I explained that in my intro. It's successive generations. The change we observe is called evolution. We observe this change. It's fact.
All right, time.
All right. Another question from Batman for £5. Eric, please don't avoid the question. Yes or no? Does science prove things?
Science proves things every day. Science has proven, for instance, that you can control blood pressure. You can control the heart rate. Science proves that you can put men on the moon. Science proves that we could put a rover on Mars. If it weren't for science, Elon Musk would not have SpaceX. So, yeah, science proves stuff every day. But, evolutionists don't believe in, they believe everything is soft science. They don't understand hard science. They don't understand that, some things are not just theoretical. Some things are not just hypotheses. Some things can actually be tested. And that is what forms hard science and the credible science. Otherwise, if you don't put things through the falsification process, all you're doing is presenting a fantasy. That's all it is. And to correct something that he said a little bit earlier, this is the last universal common ancestor, quote, the last universal common ancestor, or the last universal cellular ancestor, also called the last universal ancestor, is the most recent population of organisms from which all organisms now living on Earth have a common descent, period.
All right, you still have 35 seconds if you wanted to use it.
So basically, yeah, science proves stuff every day. To try to say science doesn't prove anything is to be an absolute novice when it comes to science.
To respond real quick to that, I don't need the full time. Science doesn't prove, science demonstrates. Everything that you cited was a demonstration of science in action. They're all demonstrations. Science is demonstrated. It demonstrates things, doesn't prove things.
So you deny that we have proven we can go to the moon?
We've demonstrated it. The
Oh,
science.
we haven't proven it.
That's time.
All right. We've got another. I'll let Eric. My turn, Eric. All right. Again from Pronon 1990 says, a question for Eric. Go to school, not YouTube. Stop being a lemon bird. Do you know who Lemon Bird is?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
Oh, so no question. In other words, just more derision from your.
It did not appear to me to be a question, but it is an encouragement.
I was relative enough to read it.
Not
Eric,
to be
I
a
don't think
lemon
you
bird.
realize how many Christians are in the chat. I'm just going to say that.
And you thought that was relevant enough to read. That's cool.
All right. Draco Fire for $5 says evolutionists change over time and cannot be refuted. Speciation is just an application of this concept over a long time. It is hard to disprove that.
How do you disprove what?
Speciation as an application of change over time.
Nobody's denying speciation. Speciation occurs. But that does not mean that you have fish evolving into the quadrupeds.
Okay.
That's a completely different thing. You have no proof for that.
It's not proof. Proof is in mathematics.
Yeah, you have no proof of anything you say. And you want to deny that we've proven that we've gone to the moon. That's just absolutely ridiculous. If you're willing to sit there and say,
Sorry.
you've proven that we've gone to the moon, you're just ridiculous. That's a ridiculous reach. And it's moronic to laugh at something like that. So go ahead and laugh. You're just covering your own ignorance.
Eric,
you're in desperation.
You literally just
I would say this whole thing has been desperate on your part.
Eric, you literally just said speciation happens. Speciation occurs as a result of evolution. You just confirmed evolution.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. You
speciation. Do you know what speciation is?
Speciation is a result of evolution.
Prove that.
That's the process.
Okay.
It's demonstrated.
So you still have no justification.
It's demonstrated. It's demonstrated, Eric.
You can't prove that one animal group evolved into another animal group. You cannot prove that.
Yes, we can.
No, let me present an example.
We don't prove it. We demonstrate it.
I'm going to present an example of your desperation here. Evolutionists, in their classification, they want to say that dogs, gray wolves, and coyotes are separate species.
They are.
But the truth is, they are?
They are different species of canids, yes.
No, define species.
No, we don't have time for those. 10 seconds left.
Well, I can define species. It's a group of like organisms that are capable of reproducing fertile offspring.
Yeah, that's how we get wolf dogs.
We have coy dogs.
Okay.
We have coy dogs and we have coy wolves.
Right.
All right. Eric.
They're the same species.
You're just making my point.
Next question.
All right. We've got another question. We've got a question from Marty, mad scientist. He is a mad scientist, so keep that in mind when you hear the question. For $5 Canadian, it says, "Hang in there, Eric. Where do I send your PMS certification?" PMS certification is professional mad scientist. I coming from a mad scientist.
I think that was rhetorical. But
You just want to deride your guess. That's fine. I'm not make that kind of bullshit.
Okay.
Calm down, man.
What? I'm just honest, man.
Eric, I think it was a joke again.
I don't care.
Like before. So, all right. From and the George said, for you, Eric, says, please explain the mechanism that Mary Schweitzer used to come to the 200% figure, which your argument relies on.
Mary Schweitzer took the hemoglobin from an ostrich. I believe that it came from the ostrich egg, as a matter of fact. But she took the hemoglobin of an ostrich, and she was able to preserve proteins that would normally have, lasted 3 days to 2 years. In other words, a little, right about 200%. As a matter of fact, her paper claims it was a 200-fold increase. So if you take the lifetime of collagen, like I said, they found vascular collagen, we know that, but that only has a half-life of 60 to 70 days. But if you use the 117-year half-life of collagen that comes from the cartilage, then you multiply that by 10 half-lives, by which time there should be none left. You only have 1,170 years. But if you multiply that by her 200-fold, then you have 234,000 years. In other words, testing proves that the uppermost limit that these bones could possibly be in age are 234,000 years. Now, I challenge anybody out there to bring forth a paper of actual experimentation that gives us the 680,000-fold increase that you're going to need to make the 80 million years from the age of the hadrosaur. They say the hadrosaur died out 80 million years ago. You need a 680,000-fold increase to reach 80 million years, and you don't have anything closer to it. You don't have anything over 200-fold. Now, laugh all you like. You're the one that doesn't have it.
I cited the paper in my citations, if anybody wants to check it out. So.
Yeah, there's no experimentation there. Check it out by all means.
It's explained throughout the scholarly.
It's a hypothesis and nothing more.
Time.
Okay. I've got a question, or not a question, it's a statement from Terry Lyons. It says, please forward to Eric and JL. I already sent it to JL. I'll send it to Eric in a second here. A paper on how evolution falsification by Van Dungen. So I will send that both to you. He put it in the chat, and I'll send it to both of you. So
awesome. Appreciate it.
I'll do that. So question for Eric. What scientific field do you have formal education in, and what college or university did you attend?
Why is that even relevant? I don't have any. I've done a lot of studying of peer-reviewed literature, though. That's where I get my information, is peer-reviewed literature, actual falsification tests, and the like. I have gone through, I have seen what the claims are, I have examined the evidence that these claims are based on, that these hypothetical claims are based on, and then I've noted whether or not they've gone through any sort of a falsification process, and they have not. The ones that have been proven wrong. Like, for instance, classifying Neanderthal as a different species from Homo sapien is absolutely wrong, because we have interbred and produced offspring with Neanderthal and with the Denisovan. So, given that the definition is like organisms that are capable of reproducing fertile offspring, then that means that we are, the Neanderthals, the same species we are. So is Denisovan. All three have interbred.
No, it means we're the same genus, not the same species.
It means that we are the same species. The same. The
Homo sapien and Homo neanderthalensis, those are different species, but we're all a part of
that's
the same
what I'm
species.
saying. They are classified as different species, and that's just wrong. They are misclassified, and they give the false impression of evolution where there is none there.
Where's the paper on that?
30
Since
seconds.
we have produced fertile offspring with Neanderthal and with Denisovan, and they produce fertile offspring with one another, we are all three the same species.
No, that's not how that works at all.
So you're going to redefine species.
No,
15 seconds.
what you are talking about is included in species. What we're talking about is we are different species within the same genus.
No, if it's included in the same species, then you're saying, yes, we are the same species.
No, I said we are different species included in the same genus.
Okay.
Of
All right.
course we're in the same genus.
You don't understand taxonomy.
All right.
When I say time, that means time.
You got to honor the moderator.
Species.
Hierarchical
Somebody
taxonomy.
calls him or mute him, please.
All right. We've got €2 from Dora Nku, who says Flurfs can learn from Eric. Next level, nuh-uh. All right. Now, Batman, for €5, says, Eric, you are wrong. Science does not prove things. There's no such thing as scientific proof. Only pseudoscience claims proof you are a pseudoscience pusher. Batman.
Okay, so I can't prove then that if you mix oxygen, or excuse me, if you mix carbide in water, I can't prove that you make acetylene.
You can demonstrate it.
Correct.
That's ridiculous. Okay, and that proves it.
A demonstration is different from proof. Proof is in mathematics.
Okay, well, change, but it's a proof. It is a proof that the proposal is true.
No, it's a demonstration. You demonstrate it to be true.
We have proven that we can go to the moon. We have proven we can put men on Mars.
No. We thought that we could, and then we demonstrated it to be true by going there.
So we proved that it was right. Now, if you see, you want to play word games.
It's not word games. This is
You're
legitimate
just
scientific
being
vernacular.
You're just being absolutely
No,
dishonest.
this is scientific
That's all you're
vernacular.
doing.
It's very
In
important.
desperation, you're making yourself look like an idiot and say, we have not proven we can go to the moon.
Okay.
Okay. I've got one for JL this time from Rocky Bixby for 10 Canadian. Here we go. You ready? Because JL hasn't had a chance to talk much, why do you think evolution keeps making crabs? Is it because they are the best life form or the worst, and evolution cannot get it right?
Oh, okay. I've recently dived. I wish I had like a full answer I could give here, but convergent evolution is terrifying. My friend who's big into it, and I've been reading the papers trying to understand it. Convergent evolution is really interesting because there's convergent and there's divergent evolution. And convergent evolution is showing that the form of the crab, is one of the most like common results of convergent evolution, where these things are evolving independently. It's actually really freaky when you think about it, like, because he'll make the joke that all things are crab, so all things will eventually be crab. that this is one of the lines that evolution is working down. I know that the jury is still out on it, but I know that a lot of work is being done to try and understand it. If I were to say why this is the case, if I were to guess, it would probably
Getting some
be
feedback. Please mute if you're not speaking.
is because crabs are really, their structural design is really solid. Just, the way that they're spaced out with their surface area and the way their limbs work. It's wild. But yeah, convergent evolution, crab form, really interesting stuff.
And they're delicious.
And they are tasty.
Next question, please.
I do enjoy a little.
Tasty with butter.
So let's see. From Planer Walk. Planer Walk is wondering, Eric, you'll have to unmute here. So it says, can you say, I'm going to try to get this right. I'd be sending you to an early grave, my boy. I'd be
Is there a legitimate question there?
I don't understand the context, but for some reason, Planer Walk wants you to say, I'd be sending you to an early grave, my boy.
I think he's calling him Mr. Crab.
Oh,
I'd be sending you to an early grave, me boy.
I do know that I didn't get a minute to respond to JL.
I didn't make a claim about you.
no, it's the questions are kind of not like this back and forth so much.
It's a SpongeBob SquarePants reference.
No, I would appreciate it if you kept the questions to the subject. But I note, too, that I didn't get a chance to respond to JL's assertion that crabs have evolved. I'd like to see
The question was for him.
Yeah, I would like to see the falsification proving that crabs evolved from anything. I'd like to see the falsification test proving that.
I don't think that was the question, but
No, that wasn't the question. I'm responding to his answer.
Cool.
Okay.
Do the work.
All right. Boomer is wondering, Eric, do you have any sources regarding your claims about carbon dating?
I have sources for absolutely everything that I've put across today. And most all of them are, I've given them to you to post.
Yep. And they are all on the webpage already.
I invite anybody to come and ask me for sources personally, by way of Facebook Messenger or even to my YouTube channel, you're more than welcome to ask me anything and discuss any of these issues with me.
All right, we've got a question. This is an interesting one from FDFE. Says, explain the London underground mosquitoes who within 6 years evolved to be so different they could not mate with any other mosquitoes. That's more speciation.
Mere speciation.
What's that?
Yeah, that's mere speciation. But, you know, they're still mosquitoes. So the fact that speciation occurs means absolutely nothing. We have that every day, but it doesn't. The hypothesis from there is that speciation turns into evolution, and it can be traced back to the Luca, which can be traced back to the first organism, which traces back to abiogenesis. And that's where it becomes pure fantasy, pure hypothetical, and there's absolutely no way to test it.
Speciation is a result of evolution, that they evolved to the point.
So you assert.
No, speciation is
You assert. But you're not willing to present any of the falsification tests to prove that any animal group evolved into another. You're not willing to present.
I can't even answer something or even say a statement without you interrupting.
Well, go ahead. Say it all you like.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the audience.
That's right. I'm just responding, but you have no way to prove your assertions.
Anyway, regardless of what he is saying, so speciation is a result of evolution. That the phylogenetic changes in these organisms and these particular species. This is observed across multiple species, like in the stickleback fish that I cited in that was observed in 2020. That these polygenic changes in their phylogenetics result in them being unable to speciate with anything else because they have simply changed too much. This change over successive generations is defined as evolution. That is what evolution is. That is evolution in action. That is evolution.
Yeah, but you can't prove that any one animal group evolved into another.
That's good. Thank you, Eric. All right, we've got a question and this is from Otangelo, who's in the chat here.
Oh my God.
So this is to JL, and I'm going to try to pronounce these correctly.
Okay.
Question JL, how is the endosymbiotic hypothesis possible if mitochondria have a different genetic code than the standard genetic code?
That question, okay, that doesn't even make sense.
How is the endosymbiotic hypothesis possible?
Those are two irrelated fields. I don't know how I don't know how to answer that question because those are two separate fields. That he's basically saying that how does one thing in this field support or prove one thing in another field? Those are two irrelated subjects. That's weird. I apologize. I don't know how he's bridging those two concepts. So
well, maybe, and we did talk about having you and Otangelo on, so maybe we can have that face-to-face question in the future. But thank you for that, Otangelo. We got just a couple more super chats, then we're going to wrap. So Alyssum asks says for 10 Australian. Interesting info. An important mechanism in the mammalian egg that stops interspecies breeding is the zone pellucida. Human sperm cannot connect with the hamster eggs, commonly used in fertility tests. I think that's just a statement. So thank you for that, Alyssa. We got Draco Fire says, if speciation isn't evolution, what is it? Eric?
Well, if we're going to talk about what is evolution as it is commonly taught, then say it over and over and over again. If evolution is nothing but change over time, then resting male is evolution. A baby growing up and dying is evolution. So, but if we go by how evolution is taught at Berkeley and elsewhere, in the high schools and etc., grade schools all over the world, evolution is the tree of life of common ancestry that goes back from every single life form today down to single-celled organisms, back to what we call the Luca. And then that eventually works back to abiogenesis, where everything just randomly blew together and popped to life someday in some way that they have absolutely no way of explaining. So what we have is a bunch of hypotheses that are built one upon the other. And like Jewell has proven tonight, they don't want to put any of this under a falsification.
Falsified.
He says it's already, even though he can't show you those processes being done because they haven't been. Abiogenesis, in its absolutely every attempt to create life from non-life, has failed. And yet he has blind faith that it occurred. You talk about blind faith, well, there it is, right there. And evolution from there to the Luca, and from there to every life form today. This is all just pure fantasy, hypothetical fantasy that they don't want to admit can't be falsified. It's unfalsifiable. Therefore, it's not distinguishable from fantasy.
All right, time. But I think your answer was unresponsive to the question. The question was, if speciation is not evolution, then what is it?
Yeah. Speciation simply is one segment of a population that can no longer interbreed and produce fertile offspring with another, with the parent population. That's all speciation is.
All right, next question, please. If we got any more.
Yeah, I'm going to reread. I mispronounced one word and it changed the whole meaning from Alyssum. I'll read it again. Interesting info. An important mechanism in the mammalian egg that stops interspecies breeding is the zona pellucida. Human sperm can connect with hamster eggs, commonly used in fertility tests. I think I got it pronounced correctly that time. We've got two more, and then
well, let me respond to that if you don't mind. There's a difference between that and interbreeding and producing fertile offspring.
Yeah, we don't see any human hamster hybrids running around, so we would assume that.
That's a good thing.
They would be adorable.
Or terrifying.
Yes.
Depending upon morphology.
Exactly. All right.
Exactly. I got what you did there.
Molossus says for $2. Atomic clocks accurate? Radio dating, same process.
Yep.
Eric, anything to that?
Well, all I'm going to say regarding this is that when it comes to radiometric dating, it doesn't matter which sort of radiometric dating you use. They have minimums where you have to use presupposition in order to use those particular elements to date anything. If you're going to date igneous rock, for instance, if you want to use potassium argon, then everybody admits that it doesn't work well if you're testing anything under 600,000 years old. So you have to presuppose age of at least 600,000 years. If you're going to use uranium lead, for instance, you have to presuppose an age of at least 1 million years old in order to use it. Now, you can Google this. It's all over. You can find it in all sort of textbooks and etc. It's real easy to find. So that's where my argument comes in. You are presupposing. I'm an old Earth creationist. Do I believe this Earth is old? I believe it's very old. As a matter of fact, I extend the possibility that this Earth is older than the 4.5 billion years that we're told that it is. I extend the possibility it could actually be much older. We don't know, and I use biblical evidence to treat this. So I have no problem with that. All I'm saying is that to date things, if you're going to date these things using radiometric dating, then if you're using anything other than C14, you have to presuppose a minimum age. If you're going to use C14, you have to presuppose a maximum age. In other words, you wouldn't use C14 on something that you suspect to be over 60 or 70,000 years old. You just wouldn't use it.
All right. The Sun Express asks, Eric, I think, why is evolution not allowed? Moreover, what is the creationist argument defending all natural extinction.
Okay, I'm sorry. What was the first part of that question?
So why is evolution not allowed, or why don't you accept evolution, I suppose?
I think I've been very clear about that. I don't accept evolution because it's mostly presupposition and unfalsifiable hypothesis. And then many of their evidences for
like
evolution has already been falsified.
like your
For
dog.
instance, that's a completely. I'll debate you on that subject any day you want to. But to answer the question that I was asked, he cannot show you any of the falsification tests that have stood the time to prove transitional fossils or several other things resulting in the hypotheses regarding evolution.
And yet you resort to fake
Evolution.
regarding the Bible.
Evolution involves several different hypotheses. And, well, at least now you're admitting that you can't present the falsification test. Thank you.
I don't need to. It's true.
So, yeah, of course you do. That's
demonstrated
your.
to be true. It's demonstrated to be true.
No. You say that because you found a fossil in the fossil record.
That's not what I said.
That is evolution.
That's not what I said. You didn't listen to my intro.
Of course I did. Every word. But yes, you did. Are you saying that? Okay.
It's not the time for that. Not the time for that.
All right. Let's
So yeah.
Go make the.
You don't want
regarding
which is why they ended my cross-examination of you, because you can't stand under these questions, and everybody knows it, including our moderator.
All right.
We didn't end it. We extended it.
Conspiracy theory. Yeah, pretty much.
No.
All right. From FTFE for £5 says human hamster hybrids. That explains SCToon. Wait, that's me. It's not hamster. It's gerbil.
Come on,
Gerbil,
give it the hands, the little hands, little hands.
All right, Draco Fire. Oh, a little loud there on the feedback. This is the last super chat we're gonna do here from Draco Fire for $2. Says, you just admitted evolution creates new species.
Pretty much.
Don't you want to respond?
Who?
Yeah, go ahead.
Who did? Who? I did? No, I didn't. I said speciation occurs, and the speciation is when one group of organisms can no longer interbreed and produce fertile offspring with the parent group.
Why can't they interbreed?
Well, there's several different reasons.
What's the mechanism that causes that change?
What? Things happen. It could be.
No. What is the thing that happens? What do we call that? The changes that result in the inability to interbreed.
You want to claim that's evolution, but you can't.
It is evolution. It's the definition of evolution.
Not the definition of evolution.
Yes,
No, that's a cheap definition of evolution that doesn't count. And no,
the things that you're talking about happening is evolution.
But what does it speciate into? Does it speciate into another life form? No, it does not.
Well, I mean, given like 10, 20 generations, no. But given hundreds of millions of generations, yes.
Well, they've had hundreds of millions of generations to test the fruit fly, and that's just a flat-out lie.
Those are controlled populations, and that's a misrepresentation of that experiment.
No, it is not a misrepresentation.
Yes, it is.
It never.
They're controlled populations that are interbred, and then they are killed off so they can do it again.
No, you can produce one section that is no longer able to reproduce with the parent, okay? But it doesn't evolve into another life form, and you can't prove that it does. You can't show us where it does. There's nothing you can present before us that proves that it does. Nothing. Zero. What we do have is.
I got to ask this, Eric. Do you understand?
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Sir. You've spoken plenty. You've spoken plenty, sir. Do you understand?
Let me.
Eric?
No, we can't do this. We can't do
Eric,
this.
You've spoken plenty. Do you understand what point mutations do? Do you know what silent mutations and nonsense mutations? Do you know what these are and how they contribute new genetic information to a population, resulting in phylogenetic changes?
Question.
Do you understand this?
All right, it switched to him for just a little bit. But
Actually, it's one side again where he gets to cross-examine me and I can't cross-examine him. That's cool. And you guys allow it. That's cool. I knew coming into this that it was going to be a one-sided affair. I told my friend.
That's enough. He's not answering the question.
Yeah, you're using your time.
Sorry about that.
The time that you could have been answering, you were just saying that we're mean to you.
All right. This brings us to our closing.
3
So
minutes
go ahead.
each.
Yeah, go ahead.
Whoever wants to start.
It's Eric first.
3 minute closing.
Oh, outro. Okay.
Eric.
He's muted.
Eric, 3 minute closing, please. He's not muted.
Are you sure you want to give that to me? I didn't get cross-examination. I didn't get to fully answer.
Just answer. Just go, Eric. Just be an adult about it and answer.
Okay. In the beginning, I told you right from the start that he was going to present hypothesis after hypothesis. He was going to present one hypothesis after another, but he had no falsification tests to put before you. I was the only one who has put falsification tests before you, and they are in my notes there. We have falsification coming from Craig Venter, proving that there is no last unified common ancestor. We have falsification coming from Mary Schweitzer, proving that the oldest these dinosaur bones can possibly be is 234,000 years old, multiplied by a mere 200%, nowhere near the 680,000% that you're going to need to make 80 million years to reach 80 million years for the hadrosaur. And then we have the C14 tests that evolutionists are scrambling to write papers about this. Why are all these scores of dinosaur bones that have been tested, every single one of them coming back C14 rich? Well, what they say is, in all of their hypotheses regarding this, why do they do it? Because all of these things were contaminated, every single one of them. Every single dinosaur bone, from every single dig that was tested, from every single museum, was contaminated. So what they're saying is, you can't trust radiocarbon dating. You can't trust their dating system at all. Because if every single one of these are contaminated, then what keeps anything else from being contaminated that's ever going to be dated from the history of everything that's ever been dated? You just can't trust it. So we have all these lines of science that prove that evolution didn't occur, that prove abiogenesis doesn't occur. You don't see a tornado blowing through, creating a 747. You don't see it then popping to life. You don't see it then developing a way to eat and procreate and coding its own self. You don't see that. You just don't see that. You don't see that in any machine, macro or micro, whether it's biological or not. We never observed it in nature. We can't recreate it in the laboratory. It just doesn't. So there you go. And my opponent today has given you lots of hypotheses, but not one bit of credible evidence from any false cover any of these things.
All right, 3 minutes, Jewell. Whenever you start, I'll hit start.
Thank you very much. Thank you, SCToon, SC and MCToon. So to conclude, my opponent has provided no evidence-based refutation of anything I've brought to this debate. He has provided nothing short of misrepresentation of the scientific method, conspiracy theory, false analogies between living organisms and jets, begging to question fallacies, arguments from ignorance, arguments from incredulity, and appeals to emotion. I think we hit the logical fallacy, board square in the face. So given the readily available evidence I have presented, we can conclude beyond any shadow of a doubt that evolution is demonstrably true, and abiogenesis is the best current working hypothesis for the origin of life on Earth, given the current evidence. We can also conclude, given my opponent's arguments, that those who take the opposite position are either deeply ignorant of the field itself or are being deliberately disingenuous, traits that we as a society artificially select against when hiring science educators. So thank you to the moderators, all the fantastic people behind the scenes, and especially to my opponent for this opportunity to demonstrate why critical thinking, rationality, and intellectual honesty will always win out over conjuring demons and gods from the shadows on the wall of a cave. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Good. Go ahead, Toon.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. If I could just some of Eric's things that he complained about throughout this. During the cross-examination period, Eric, you did not even allow JL 2-3 words to go before you interrupted him. You did definitely get significantly longer cross-examination time. Also, when JL was cross-examining you, you didn't actually answer his question. So your complaints about that he didn't answer your questions, I don't think that you answered his questions either. But that's in the past, and we're going to move forward here. So thank you to everybody. One thing from John Rapp, who says cross-examination is not interrupting and over-talking, and I think that's very well stated. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to Eric and JL for joining us. We did try to make this to follow the structure and to have a good time. Eric, you definitely did get the bulk of the speaking time here. So if anybody were to count the times that people were speaking, I would guess you got about 2-1 to JL on that. Anything as we wrap up here, Cliff?
Yeah, it was definitely a learning experience for me. It's the first really hotly contested debate that I've ever moderated. So I took a few notes to myself. The little bit of a dumpster fire, but I think I've got some new tools in my tool bag to take care of that in the future.
All right. Well, excellent. Well, look out for next week. We are planning to have a debate. We're not certain yet, but we're looking to have that one with Cliff here. And who was it?
Will Turbot.
Will Turbot. That should be an interesting one. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Be sure to give a thumbs up and a like, subscribe, hit the bell, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Our Craig, are we live or is?
Yep, I'm just going to leave that for 30 seconds.
He's muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Craig.
Did he fall asleep? Haven't heard from him in a bit.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just letting this play for 30 seconds.